Jack Renner's eyes opened slowly. The ceiling above him was glowing, a soft blue light that hummed like electricity. His body ached, and his head felt heavy. The last thing he remembered was the explosion on planet Vecron, the war, the screaming, the fire. And then nothing. Now he was lying on something soft but cold. He tried to move, but something held him back. His hands were chained to the side of the bed. He looked around quickly. The room was not human. The walls were curved and metallic, glowing with strange symbols. Everything smelled clean. Too clean, like chemicals and metal mixed together. He wasn't alone. Someone else was in the room, sitting silently on the floor near the wall. It was a girl, not human. She was young, maybe around 20 by human standards. Her skin was silver gray, smooth like polished stone. Her hair was long, almost white, and it fell over her shoulders like silk. But her eyes were the color of stars, bright, glowing blue, full of fear. She was wearing a thin cloth, more like a sheet than clothes, and her ankles were chained too. Jack sat up slightly, the chains clinking loudly. The alien girl gasped and pressed herself back against the wall. She was shaking. "Hey," Jack said gently, his voice dry and weak. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered something in a language he didn't understand. Then, slowly in broken English, she said, "Please. No pain. Please don't touch me." Jack's heart sank. This wasn't right. This wasn't a rescue. This was something else, something worse. A robotic voice came from a speaker on the wall. "Human soldier Jack Renner, you are the victor of Unit 12. Your reward has been delivered, one live specimen, untouched. Please enjoy responsibly." Jack stared at the speaker in horror. Reward? Specimen? They were talking about her. They gave her to him like a prize. He looked back at the alien girl, who was still curled up and afraid. "This is wrong," he whispered to himself. What kind of monsters would do this? He pulled at his chains, but they were strong. Still, he had to try. The girl flinched at every sound he made. He noticed bruises on her arms, like she had been dragged or beaten before. "Hey," he said softly, "I'm not like them. I don't want this. I don't want you like this. You're not a reward. You're a person." The girl's eyes met his for the first time. Something changed in her gaze. She was still scared, but she also looked confused. No one had ever said that to her before. Not in this place. Jack slowly removed the thin sheet covering himself and tossed it toward her. "Take it," he said. "Cover yourself, it's okay." She hesitated, then took it slowly and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jack smiled a little. "Do you have a name?" She nodded. "Kira." "My name is Kira." "Kira," Jack repeated gently. "Nice to meet you. My name's Jack. And I swear to you, I will never hurt you." She looked at him for a long moment, then she moved a little closer, still dragging her chains behind her. For the first time, she was not shrinking away. Jack sat as tall as the chains would allow and looked around again. He needed a plan. He couldn't just sit here while she was treated like property. They were both prisoners, even if they didn't call him one yet. A sharp buzz echoed in the room. Then a gas sprayed from small holes in the wall. Kira coughed and covered her face. Jack felt his head spin again. Sleep. They were forcing him back to sleep. He tried to fight it, tried to hold onto her face in front of him. "Kira," he whispered, "don't give up. We'll get out together." His eyes closed again, and the light above dimmed as the room returned to silence. Two chained souls, locked in a twisted gift box. But in that brief moment, a connection was made, not of power, not of ownership, but of hope. Jack woke up again. But this time his eyes opened faster. His memory returned. In pieces, blue lights, chains, the soft voice of the alien girl. "Kira." He quickly turned his head to look for her. She was still there, sitting near the wall. But something had changed. She wasn't as afraid now. She had moved closer during the night. Her chains stretched almost as far as they could go. She was watching him, silent, cautious, but not terrified. Jack sat up slowly, his body still sore. "Good morning," he said gently. Kira didn't speak at first, then nodded once. "You didn't hurt me," she whispered, as if surprised. Jack gave a small smile. "I told you I wouldn't, no matter what they say. I'm not here to claim anyone." Kira looked down at her wrist shackles. "Others did. They all said they wouldn't. Then they did." Jack felt a knot in his chest. The more he looked at her, the more he realized this wasn't just slavery. It was cruelty wrapped in a ribbon. They had given him a living person and expected him to, what, enjoy it? Use her? Like she was an object? No, he couldn't let this go on. "Do they watch us?" he asked her quietly. Kira nodded toward a black crystal embedded in the wall. "Always, some watch to see if you use me." Her voice cracked as she said it. "Some bet on when you will." Jack clenched his fists, his chains rattling with anger. "Then we'll give them a show they'll never expect," he said under his breath. Kira tilted her head, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean we'll play along, but only for them to lower their guard. We're getting out of here, Kira, I swear it." A long silence followed, then, for the first time, she gave him a look, not of fear, but of curiosity, like she was trying to understand him. "You would risk that?" she asked. "For me?" Jack looked her in the eye. "No, not for you, for us." Kira blinked, and something inside her shifted. Maybe it was trust. Maybe just hope, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She crawled a little closer until they were nearly shoulder to shoulder. "This place has no windows," she said, "but I can feel the sun. We are underground. Do you know the way out?" "Some. Before they gave me to you, I saw where the guards came from. I know one tunnel where they don't lock the door properly. But we'd still need to unlock our chains first." Jack nodded slowly. The plan was forming. It wasn't perfect. Was dangerous, maybe impossible, but it was a plan. "I'll need your help," he said. Kira looked surprised. "My help?" "Yes, you know this place better than I do. I don't see a slave when I look at you. I see someone brave, someone who survived. That means you're strong." Her eyes widened a little. She didn't respond right away. She just stared at him, like she was hearing something she had never been told in her life. Then she said quietly, "They never called me strong before." "Well, they were wrong." Jack replied, "You are." Suddenly the door slid open with a soft hiss. A tall alien entered, gray armor, reptilian face, glowing red eyes. Behind him, two smaller guards stood, holding shock rods. The leader walked up to the glass wall between them and spoke in a cold voice. "Human Jack Renner, your prize remains unused. Your value to the arena is questioned. Enjoy her, or she will be given to another." Kira froze beside Jack, shrinking back again, but Jack stood up, his chains pulling tight. He walked to the glass wall and stared the alien down. "You don't get to tell me what I value," he said. "You don't own me, and you sure as hell don't own her." The alien guard growled, but didn't answer. Then, without warning, he threw something through a small slot in the wall. It was a metal collar, black with blinking lights. "Put it on her by nightfall, or we will do it for you," the alien hissed. The door closed again, leaving silence behind. Jack picked up the collar and turned it in his hand. There was a tiny blade inside, one that would inject control spikes into the neck. Pain spikes, shock wires, obedience programs. He dropped it like it was on fire. Kira watched him, eyes wide. "You didn't put it on me," she whispered. "Never," he said firmly. "We need to move faster now. Tonight, we begin. We'll escape this place before they turn you into something you're not." Kira didn't speak, but her hands slowly reached out. She touched his arm, barely a whisper of contact. It wasn't a thank you. It was something more, a spark, a beginning, not of slavery, but of something new, something human. The lights inside the chamber dimmed again, signaling night cycle. Jack sat on the floor, staring at the collar the guards had thrown earlier. He hadn't moved it, hadn't touched it since. It lay in the corner like a snake, dangerous and full of poison. He could feel Kira's eyes watching him from the other side of the room. Both of them knew they were running out of time. Kira pulled her knees close and whispered, "They always make them wear the collar before they sell them, once it's on. It never comes off without hurting." Jack clenched his jaw. "Then we leave before that happens." He looked up at her. "You said there's a weak tunnel, right?" She nodded. "Yes, in the east wing. It connects to a waste duct. Guards don't check it often because of the smell." "Perfect," Jack replied. "We'll use it." She hesitated, then whispered, "There's a problem, our chains. They're attached to the wall base. We can't move more than a few steps without noise." Jack frowned, thinking hard. He scanned the room again, looking for anything, any tool, any sharp edge, any mistake in design. Then he spotted it, the small panel, where food trays slid in metal edge. Slightly bent, he stood slowly, walked over, and tested the metal with his hand. It was sharp, just enough. He looked back at Kira. "We'll file the chain links down, bit by bit," he said. "Quietly, slowly, but we do it every hour when no one is watching." Kira crawled over beside him, careful not to rattle her chains too much. She touched the metal edge, eyes hopeful for the first time. "Yes," she said, "we can do this." For the next few days they acted. Jack pretended to be her master, cold and quiet during the day. Guards watched them, expecting something ugly. But all they saw was silence. At night, Jack and Kira filed their chains slowly, carefully, piece by piece. Sometimes they talked in whispers. She told him about her homeworld, a beautiful planet with violet trees and skies that glowed green. At night, she used to be a temple apprentice, studying healing light, until raiders came, captured her, and sold her like an object. Jack shared his stories too. Not about war, but about Earth, about coffee, snow, and dogs. Kira listened like a child hearing a fairy tale. They started laughing, smiling, even if only for a second. In that tiny prison, something warm was growing between them. Not romance, not yet, but trust. The strongest kind, built in silence, pain, and whispers. One night, Jack leaned back and whispered, "My chain is almost through. How's yours?" Kira held up her wrist, showing a nearly cut link. "One more night," she said. "Maybe two," Jack nodded. "Soon, Kira, we'll be free." That night, they both woke suddenly to a loud bang. The door opened, not for food delivery, but for something worse. A new alien entered, tall, thin, wrapped in golden robes. He wore a collar around his own neck, but it was clearly a symbol of power, not control. Behind him, two guards pushed in a second cage, empty, but meant for transport. The robed alien spoke. "The auction date has changed. The female will be processed by sunrise. Prepare her for transfer." Jack's heart dropped. Sunrise, that meant they had only hours left. He stood quickly, stepping in front of Kira. "You said I had until tomorrow," he snapped. "She's mine." The alien gave a cruel smile. "You refuse to use her. That lowers her value, so she will be given to someone who understands her worth." The guards moved forward, reaching for her. Kira screamed and backed away, grabbing Jack's arm tightly. Jack shouted, "She stays with me. You want a show?" "Fine." He stepped toward Kira and whispered fast, "Play along now." Then he turned back to the guards and wrapped his arms around her protectively. "This one belongs to me," he said loudly. "Touch her again and I'll rip your arm off." The guards hesitated, unsure whether this was real or not. The robed alien gave a low laugh and turned to leave. "You have until morning." "Human," he said. "One last night, then she's gone." As the door shut again, silence returned. Kira looked up at Jack with wide eyes. "I thought they were taking me. They almost did." Jack said, voice shaking, "We have only a few hours now. We finish the cuts tonight. We escape before sunrise." Kira nodded quickly, wiping away a tear. They rushed back to the panel and worked with trembling hands. No time for breaks now, no time for caution. They cut, they pulled, they bled. But when the chain finally snapped, The sound was the most beautiful music they had ever heard. Kira's chain broke minutes later. Jack looked at her and held out his hand. She took it without fear. "Ready?" he asked. Kira nodded. "Was born ready," she said with a small smile. They stood together, two fugitives in a quiet prison. One last wall between them and freedom, and they were done waiting. Asterisk. The silence before their escape was the loudest sound Jack had ever heard. Kira stood beside him, both free from their chains for the first time. Her ankles were red and bruised, but she didn't complain. Jack checked the vent panel near the floor, the one Kira had mentioned earlier. It was dusty, rusted around the edges, and barely large enough for them to crawl through. "This is it," Jack whispered, pulling the panel off slowly. Screws snapped with soft pops. Metal creaked, but no alarms triggered yet. Behind them, the room remained still. He turned to Kira. "Go first, I'll follow." Kira nodded and slipped into the narrow duct like a shadow. Jack followed, pushing the metal panel behind him to cover their tracks. Inside, the vent was dark and tight. The air smelled like chemicals and old metal. Their knees scraped along the floor, and every movement felt louder than it should have. Kira led the way, her glowing blue eyes faintly lighting the tunnel ahead. "This path leads to a service shaft," she whispered. "Then we find the East Wing tunnel." Jack tried to stay quiet, but pain pulsed through his side. His ribs still hadn't healed. Every breath reminded him of the blast that had brought him here. But pain meant he was alive, and that was enough. They crawled for several minutes before Kira suddenly stopped. She raised a hand, signaling him to freeze. Jack held his breath, listening. A low hum vibrated through the metal wall's footsteps, heavy ones getting closer, through the grate just ahead. They saw an alien patrol walking down the hall, tall armored guards, their faces hidden by black helmets. Weapons in hand, Jack and Kira didn't move. They stayed completely still until the footsteps faded. Then Kira turned to him, her voice barely audible. "They are guarding every main corridor. We'll have to use the waste route, even if it's risky." Jack nodded. He'd been in war zones before, but this was different. This wasn't a mission. This was survival with someone else depending on him. They reached the end of the shaft, where a loose panel opened into a utility hallway. It stank like oil, sewage, and burnt wires, but they climbed out anyway, stepping into the dim light. Kira pointed left, that way, the tunnel. Just as they took their first step, a voice shouted behind them, "Escapees, stop!" Jack turned and saw two guards at the far end of the hall, running toward them with raised weapons. "Run!" he yelled, grabbing Kira's hand. They sprinted, feet slamming on metal, alarms starting to blare behind them. Red lights flashed along the walls, and the whole facility came alive with noise. Kira led the way, turning corners fast, leaping over pipes and sliding under beams. Jack followed, his military training kicking in. Blaster bolts hit the walls around them, sparks flying past their faces. But they didn't stop. They couldn't. Up ahead, the tunnel door came into view. Kira jumped to the control panel and slammed her palm against it. Come on," she whispered. The door opened with a groan, and they dove inside just as it closed behind them, locking the sound of shouting guards outside. They were in a dark circular tunnel now, the walls dripping with moisture. "Where does this lead?" Jack asked, trying to catch his breath. Kira pointed ahead, to the old landing bay. "No one uses it anymore, but there might be an escape pod." Jack nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Let's go then. We keep moving until we're off this rock." They moved forward, slower now, each step echoing off the tunnel walls. Behind them, the sound of pounding doors warned that the guards wouldn't be far behind. But the tunnel seemed endless, stretching like a vein through the belly of the facility. Jack noticed the way Kira limped slightly. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "My leg," she said. "It's okay, just sore." Jack stopped and ripped part of his sleeve, wrapping it around her ankle for support. She watched him in silence, then said softly, "No one's ever helped me like that before." Jack smiled weakly. "Get used to it." They kept going until finally, The tunnel widened into a large chamber. It was a forgotten hangar, Dusty, full of broken parts, crates, and one small escape pod tucked in the corner. It's real, Jack whispered, shocked. He rushed to the pod and started checking the controls. They gutted most of it, but the engine's still here. Maybe we can make it run. Kira climbed in beside him, her eyes scanning the wiring. I know this tech, she said. I used to fix temple gates. This I can do. Jack stepped back, letting her work. Blasters rang out behind them, guards entering the tunnel. We're out of time, Jack said. Can you fly it? Kira didn't look up, her fingers dancing over controls. Yes, just hold them off for 1 minute. Jack turned, picked up a metal rod, and stood at the hangar entrance. He wasn't going back, not tonight, not while she had a chance, and he was ready to fight for that chance. Behind him, the escape pod rumbled to life, and Kira's voice rang out like a bell in the dark. It's ready, get in. Jack didn't hesitate. He turned and dove into the pod. Kira hit the launch button, and with a roar of light, the pod shot out into space. Leaving the guards behind, they were free for now. The escape pod rattled as it tore through the blackness of space. Kira sat at the controls, her silver fingers gripping the handles tightly. Jack was strapped into the seat beside her, bruised and breathless. Smoke hissed from the back panel, and warning lights blinked red across the screen. They weren't flying, they were falling with direction. We're going too fast, Jack shouted over the noise. I know, Kira replied. But if I slow us down, we won't make it to the surface. The pod shook harder, metal groaning around them. Ahead of them was a dark planet, gray clouds. Swirling across its atmosphere, a mining world, long abandoned. No cities, no law, no trackers. It was the best place to hide or crash and die. The pod hit the upper layer of clouds and shook violently. Kira fought the controls, biting her lip. Hold on, she said. This will hurt, with a loud crack. The pod broke through the clouds and slammed into the rocky surface. Dust exploded around them, engines screamed, and the pod skidded across the ground. Finally, after what felt like forever, it came to a stop against a pile of old cargo crates. Silence followed. Jack opened his eyes slowly, head spinning. We alive? Kira unstrapped herself and stood with shaky legs. Barely, she said. But we made it. Jack groaned and stood up, limping out of the pod. The sky was dim dark gray with no visible sun. The air was dry but breathable. The ground was covered in rusted equipment, old landing pads, and shattered buildings. It looked like a ghost town for machines. Kira stepped out beside him, pulling a cloth around her shoulders to stay warm. This place. It used to be a fuel port, she explained. Many ships came here once, now it's forgotten. That makes 2 of us, Jack said with a tired smile. They walked together, looking for shelter. After a few minutes, they found a half-collapsed hangar. It had one working door, some scattered supplies, and even a solar panel still giving power. Inside, it was dusty, but safe. Jack collapsed onto a broken crate, holding his ribs. Kira rushed to his side, her face full of concern. You're bleeding again, she whispered. I'll live, Jack muttered. It's just a scratch. That's a lie, she replied and began tearing a strip from her cloth. She moved carefully, cleaning the wound with a mix of dust-filtered water and a glowing root she crushed from her pocket. The light soothed the pain, almost like magic. Jack looked at her with wonder. You really were a healer, he said. Kira nodded. Before I was taken, I helped many. Now I help you. They sat in silence for a while. Wind howled outside, dust sweeping across the plains like waves in the ocean. Jack looked around the hangar and said, we can stay here for a few days, catch our breath, then figure out what's next. Kira hesitated before asking, what if there is no next? What if they find us? Jack looked her straight in the eyes. Then we fight or we run again, but we don't give up. She nodded slowly, then surprised him by sitting beside him close. Their shoulders touched, but neither moved away. You were meant to take me, she said softly. Like a prize, but you protected me, even when it cost you everything. Jack turned his head to her. I didn't see a prize, I saw someone afraid. And then I saw someone strong, then. Someone I wanted to protect, not because I had to, because I chose to. Kira's voice dropped to a whisper. I don't remember what freedom feels like. Jack reached out and took her hand gently. Then let's find it together, outside. The sky darkened more, stars hidden behind storm clouds. Inside, the two sat beside each other, closer than before, not as prisoner and soldier, but as something new. When night came, Jack found an old blanket and gave it to Kira. He chose to sleep near the door, keeping watch. Before she closed her eyes, Kira whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." Jack looked at her and said, "You're not invisible anymore." The wind outside screamed louder, but inside the forgotten hangar, there was calm, for the first time in a long time. Both of them slept not as prisoners but as survivors, and maybe, just maybe, as friends. The next morning came without sunlight. Only the faint gray glow above the ruins told Jack that it was day. He opened his eyes slowly. Still sitting near the hangar door, his back ached, and his ribs still hurt, but he reached for his old military knife and stood up. Across the room, Kira was already awake. She sat cross-legged on the floor, her white hair falling over her shoulders. In her lap, she was shaping small rocks into points, tiny tools or weapons. She looked up and gave a small nod. Rested? Jack gave a tired smile. Not really, but I'll manage. They ate a dry pack of human rations he'd found in the escape pod. Kira didn't enjoy the taste, but she ate quietly beside him. After breakfast, Jack stood and said, "We need to move soon. This place isn't safe forever." Kira agreed. "There's an old transmitter tower east of here. If we can fix it, we can send a message. Maybe a human ship will hear us." Jack's face lit up with hope. "How far is it?" "Not far," she answered. "But it's open ground, if anyone's tracking us." "They'll see." Jack tightened the straps on his makeshift armor. "We'll take the risk," he said. "I didn't come this far to hide in a broken shed." They left the hangar quietly, keeping low. The wind blew dust across the ground, covering their footprints. It was cold, and the silence made every step louder. Kira led the way, her feet moving like she had walked this path before. She stopped once and said, "Something feels wrong." Jack listened too, and then he heard it faint humming in the distance, a ship. Before they could react, a blaster shot slammed into the ground beside them. Dust exploded in the air. "Run!" Jack shouted, grabbing Kira's hand. They dashed toward the tower, zigzagging across the rocky ground. Blaster fire rained behind them, each bolt missing by inches. Kira stumbled, but Jack pulled her up without stopping. They reached a crumbling wall near the tower and dropped behind it, gasping. Jack peeked over the edge and saw it. A small hunter ship circling above. Alien bounty trackers. "They found us," he whispered. Kira's voice shook. "I told you. They never stop. They always come for the ones who run." Jack checked his weapon. A single pulse pistol half charged. He looked at Kira. "I won't let them take you." Kira's eyes widened. "You don't have to do this for me." Jack gave a soft smile. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this with you. This is our fight now." A sharp voice shouted from the sky. "Human 142 Delta and property asset surrender or be eliminated." Jack stood slowly and fired one shot into the sky. It hit the side of the ship, not enough to damage it, but enough to show he wasn't afraid. He ducked again and looked at Kira. "You ready?" She nodded. "Let's make them regret coming." They ran together toward the tower, dodging behind rocks and broken metal. The ship hovered lower, and alien soldiers dropped down with cables, 3 of them, armored and armed. Jack turned and fired again, hitting one in the leg. The alien roared and fell. Kira threw one of her sharp rocks at another. It hit his eye, and he screamed in pain. Jack charged the last one and tackled him to the ground. They fought hand to hand, punches and kicks echoing in the dust. Jack grabbed the alien's blaster and fired. It was over in seconds. Kira ran to him, panting. "Are you okay?" He nodded, wiping blood from his lip. "Yeah, but we have to hurry." They climbed the short ladder to the transmitter station. Most of it was broken, rusted by time, but Kira found a working panel. Her fingers moved fast, connecting wires. Rerouting power outside, the ship circled again. It began charging its weapons. "We've got less than a minute," Jack warned. Kira worked faster. Almost got it." She slammed the final switch and the tower lit up. A burst of energy shot into the sky. A signal, a call for help. The ship above them stopped suddenly. Then its screen flickered and a voice spoke. "Human signal detected." Federation vessel en route. The bounty ship turned and flew off. They didn't want to fight with the human Federation. Not today. Jack let out a long breath and collapsed beside Kira. "We did it," she nodded, her eyes full of tears. "Someone hurt us." He looked at her. "You're not a slave anymore. You're free, and you chose to fight." Kira reached for his hand and held it tight. "No one ever fought beside me before. Now I believe in freedom." The wind blew softer now, and far in the distance, the sky lit up. A human ship was coming. The silver glow of the incoming ship lit up the dark sky like a rising moon. Kira and Jack stood at the edge of the broken transmitter tower. Side by side, both were covered in dust and blood, but their eyes held something new: peace. The signal had been received. Help was coming. Kira looked up at the ship as it drew closer. Its smooth metallic body reflected the gray clouds above. On its side, in bold human letters, were the words, "United Earth Federation, Rescue Unit 9. Her breath caught in her throat. She had dreamed of freedom, but never believed it could come from the stars. Jack watched her with a soft expression. She didn't flinch anymore. She didn't hide behind fear. She stood tall, her hair blowing in the wind, her face proud and calm. She wasn't the same girl he had found chained and trembling in that alien cell. She had become something more, something strong. As the ship landed, dust swirled around them. The back ramp opened, and human soldiers in gray armor stepped out. One of them raised his hand and shouted, "Identify yourselves." Jack stepped forward, holding up his hands. "Sergeant Jack Renner, Earth Infantry, we're survivors." The team lowered their weapons and rushed forward. A medic ran to Jack while two others carefully approached Kira. She stepped back slightly, unsure, but Jack reached for her hand and held it tight. "She's with me," he said firmly. "She's not a threat. She's not property. She's a person. Treat her with respect." The soldiers nodded, confused, but respectful. The commander, a woman with a scar across her cheek, stepped forward. "What happened to you, Sergeant?" she asked. Jack gave a tired laugh. "It's a long story. Short version: aliens tried to give me a slave as a prize. I took her instead. Now we're both alive because of it." The commander raised an eyebrow, then looked at Kira. "And you?" Kira looked unsure, then slowly said, "Was taken. But he didn't chain me. He freed me. I'm not his, he's mine. We're each other's." The commander gave a slow nod. "Well, let's get you both inside. We'll sort the rest later." Inside the ship, Kira was given clean clothes, food, and a small room to rest. Jack was treated for his injuries and given fresh armor. For the first time in days, he could breathe without pain. But even after all that, he didn't feel at ease until he saw her again. He walked to her room and knocked gently. Kira opened the door, her white hair now brushed and falling neatly over her shoulders. She looked peaceful, but her eyes still searched his. "I thought maybe they would take you away," she whispered. Jack smiled. "No one's taking me anywhere without you." She stepped aside, and he walked in. They sat together on the small bed, both quiet for a moment. Then Kira said, "What now?" Jack leaned back against the wall and looked at her. "Now we decide you're free, Kira. You can go anywhere, start over, live the life you were meant to." She turned toward him, her voice soft but clear. "And what about you?" He shrugged. I don't know, maybe go home, maybe join a deep space mission, maybe just rest. Kira looked down, twisting her fingers nervously. I could come with you, she said slowly. Not because I have to, not because you saved me, but because I want to, Jack smiled. I'd like that, but only if you choose it. Kira reached out and placed her hand in his. I choose it, not because I owe you, but because you never treated me like something broken. They sat like that for a while, hand in hand, outside the window. Stars shimmered like a sea of diamonds. Kira leaned her head against his shoulder and whispered, I was once called a slave, now I'm a survivor, and with you, I'm free. Jack rested his head against hers and closed his eyes. No, he said gently. You're not just free, you're mine because you chose to be, and that means everything. As the ship drifted toward Earth, their journey wasn't over, but it had become something beautiful, born in chains but ending in choice. Because she was never his reward. She was his equal, his fighter, his future,